Coming off a $300 win in Toledo, we head 2 hours south to Columbus, home of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Check it out. I have to be honest, being from Illinois, Ohio State has never been my favorite team, but I can appreciate great football and I'll never pass up the opportunity to see a top 5 team play, and I'll give it to the fans. They're obsessed with the team and the energy inside the stadium was electric. After watching the Buckeyes completely manhandle Wisconsin for 3 quarters, we head out early to Dayton to see some flops. On the way, we stop at the Hollywood Casino Columbus to get a chip for the collection, and I end up making $495 in an hour. Back on the road to Dayton, the card room there is called Mad River. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to another video here in Dayton, Ohio at Mad River. That Ohio State game was an absolute blast. Now we're going to get into some 1-2 action, but no fear, it is an it is a match the stack game. So I'm already in for 700 without even seeing a hand. Hopefully it goes well, and I look forward to seeing everyone on the tables. Let's go! The room is packed for their inaugural $1 million guaranteed tournament, but we came to play some cash. I jump into the 1-2 match the stack game for $700. First hand of the night, I look down at pocket kings from the hijack. We get called by the button and the small blind. That means we're going 3 ways to the flop. When the flop comes queen 9-5 with 2 clubs, you'd think I'd want to go for a bet on this flop. However, being in and out of position to an opponent, I usually start with a check. I also have the king of clubs in my hand, therefore blocking a lot of the club flush draws, so I don't mind a check in this spot. When the action's on the button, he decides to check behind, bringing in the 5 of diamonds on the turn. Small blind checks it over to me for a second time, and now I'm going to go for value. We can get value from a lot of hands like Jack 10. Any weak 9s might pay us off for a street, and obviously any queen isn't going anywhere. For that reason, I decide to size up 2/3 for $30. And we're going to get looked up by just the button this time. Heads up to the river, out of position, and it comes the 8 of diamonds, which really shouldn't change too much. I think I could size up in this spot, but instead I look to go for half pot for $55. In hindsight, I think sizing up is better because it polarizes myself to either having a bluff or having a strong hand. However, by checking the flop, it's likely the opponent thinks we're bluffing, so sizing up actually makes the most amount of sense. Still, $55 is a good price. The button agrees, tosses in some red chips he'll never get back. I turn over the winning hand, pocket kings, the overpair, and he slams his cards in disgust. Moving right along, we look down at 7-8 of diamonds from the big blind. The cutoff opens it up to $12. When the button and the small blind both put in the call, the action's on me. I'm in the big blind, and obviously just putting in the $12 is probably the right move. Instead though, I decide to 3-bet to $55. If I'm 3-betting with all my strong hands, gotta throw in some mediocre hands as well. I think 8-7 of diamonds is a good candidate to do so. So when I pop it up to $55, let's see who puts in the call. Obviously, I wouldn't be going over this hand if no one called, so the small blind puts in the call. Great news for us, we're going in position to a flop with $130 in the middle, and it comes queen 9-6, 2 hearts. Without connecting with this board, we actually have a big piece of it. We have the open-ended straight draw. It's unfortunate though there's 2 hearts, because let's say a 10 of hearts or a 5 of hearts comes. We obviously make the straight, but it brings in the front door flush draw. Either way though, I'm not complaining, so when the small blind checks it over to me, I go for around 1/3 the size of the pot for $45, to which he says, yes sir, let's go. He puts in the call and we're off to the turn, which pairs the top card, the queen of diamonds. It's an interesting card because when the top card pairs, it's less likely that he has so. So when he calls me on the flop, I'm now putting him on a weak hand like 9-10, ace-9, or maybe a heart flush draw. When he checks it over to me for a second time, I think going for a bet is the right move. Normally I would say let's check behind and get to a cheap river, but when the top card pairs, I think going for a bet here and getting him to fold a lot of those hands I just mentioned is actually the better play. So I actually decided to bet out for $80, and let's see what the small blind does. He tosses in the call. Interesting spot. I don't really think he has a queen, so he's probably just getting sticky with one pair. All right, dealer, one time. Let's use our one time this session on the 5 of clubs on the river. Bang, we river the straight. Dream river card for me, and now we're praying he has a queen. When he checks it over to me for a third time, obviously there's nothing else for me to do other than rip it all in. I have him covered. It's around $200 effective. He hems and haws and thinks about the decision, ultimately finding the right decision for him, and he folds his cards. But still, that 5 of clubs on the river was a miracle card, and we're taking down that nearly $400 pot. Next hand, we look down at King Queen of Diamonds from middle position. I decided to raise it up to $20, and we get 2 calls, so we're going 3 ways to the flop, right? Nope. The button decides to 3-bet all the way up to a measly $35. Is this legal? Yes, it is. I made it $15 more than the $5 straddle, so legally he can make it $15 more than my $20. $35 is the price of poker. The player on my right puts in the call. I could be re-raising here, but I don't want to get into a weird situation where he's doing this with aces or kings. So I just decided to put in the call, and 2 others call as well. So it's already a weird hand. We're going off to a flop with 175 in the middle, which comes ace king jack with 2 hearts. I have second pair and a gutter to Broadway. When the action checks around on the flop, the turn comes the 5 of diamonds. And the action checks now over to the hijack, who bets out for $30. When the cutoff and the button both call, I think I'm getting a good price to put in $30. That's what I do. I toss in the $30, and the river gives us 2 pair. It comes the queen of clubs, although it's a double-edged sword. Although our hand strength improves to 2 pair, now puts a 4-liner to a straight. Any 10 will have us beat. For that reason, I check it over to the cutoff, who bets out for $100. The button now shoves all in, which makes my decision very easy. I could contemplate a call if I was closing the action against the cutoff for $100. But when the other player rips it all in, I easily get out of the way, and the cutoff decides to put in the call, so we're going to see what they have. They both turn over a 10, so they're going to chop up that pot and a bit of my money there. Hand of the night, I look down at pocket 5s from the cutoff. I have around $900 in my stack, and the player in middle position opens it up to $15. The player on my right puts in the call. I could be 3-betting here up to $60. Instead, I take the passive route and just put in the $15, to which 2 other players say, let's go. They put in the $15, and we're off to a flop 5 ways, which comes king, king, 5. Bang! We flop a boat. Not just any boat, any king is going to get all their money in here. It's such a great spot for me because 2 other players can have a king and are probably going to stack off, and I'm just going to win all the chips. When the action checks over to me, I could check and be trappy. However, I don't really think there's any point in slow playing. If they have a king, they have it, and the money's just going to pile in anyways. So let's start putting the money in now. I bet out for $50. Our buddy Greg, he puts in the call for $50. Oh boy, Greg, save your money, man. And the hijack on my right decides to rip it all in for $186. I posture myself for a second before putting in just the call. I want everybody in there if they have a good hand. I don't want to scare them out of it. Luckily for Greg, he gets out of the way and makes the correct fold. And I immediately turn over my hands, pocket 5s, and sure enough, we're up against Jack King offsuit. Dude's in tough shape. He's going to need a king or a jack to improve. The turn comes the deuce of diamonds. The river comes the 5 of hearts. Bang! We river quads. Didn't need it. It's a bit of overkill, but I'm throwing that bang in there anyways, because how often do you get quads? Come on. $497 being shipped my way. And this session is off to a great start.
Quads! Bang! Let's go! Thank you.
Just let you know it ain't.
Let's keep this train going in the right direction. I look down at Jack 8 of hearts from early position. I have $1,200 in my stack. I raise it up to $15. Do we get any folds? Absolutely not. The entire table puts in the call. Not even making this up. We're off to a flop with the entire table, which comes 10, 7, deuce, rainbow. Action checks over to the hijack, who bets out for $30. The big blind puts in the call, and I'm in early position. I decide to put in the call as well. We're filming a vlog. I gotta put some random hands in there, and I decide to float here with a gutter to a 9, giving me a straight, and I could have some backdoor heart ideas. Off 3 ways to a turn, which comes the king of clubs. Doesn't improve me in the slightest. The big blind checks it over to me. I check it over to the hijack. Luckily, he checks behind, so we're going to see a free river card. Will it improve us? Absolutely not. It comes as 7 of clubs. When the big blind checks it over to me, I don't snap check it over to the hijack. I don't want to give up on this hand. I just have jack high, so I'm obviously not going to win it. But still, there's $180 to be won in the middle. When the hijack checks back on the turn, what does he really have? I'm putting him on a weak hand, like a 7x holding, maybe a pocket pair, maybe a weak 10. He definitely doesn't have a king. Like, who would check behind a king on the turn with 2 clubs out there? So I can eliminate those combos from his range. For that reason, I can bet big on this river and represent all the strong kings. I can also represent all the club flushes. So for that reason, I decided to take a stab here with my jack high and bet out for $150. It's nearly a pot-sized bet, and we get a super long tank from the hijack, which is definitely what I want to see, although I'd prefer him just to fold his cards instead of thinking about it. But in the end, he decides to put in the call. The big blind gets out of the way, and that's not great news for us. But I'm going to turn over my cards to see what he called me with, and sure enough, 10-8 offsuit. So we had just a pair of 10s. That was one of the hands that I wanted to get to fold, but great call from him. I guess my line might have looked a little bit bluffy, but I can still have all the kings, flushes, and even some 7x combos in my range, so yeah. Don't really hate my bet there, just a way better call from the hijack, and that's going to reward him with that $480 pot. We're going to battle here with ace-queen offsuit from the small blind. Early position opens it up to $10, and there's a bunch of calls over to me. I'm out of position, so I decide to size up to $50. We're going to get called by the big blind. He puts in the $50. Early position now decides to rip his entire stack in for $100, and the action's back over to me. We have a decision. I could put in the $50 or I could re-raise. I think re-raising is probably the best move because it'll get rid of the big blind and we'll go heads up with the early position, who probably has suited connectors, maybe a king X type hand, a worse ace, or could just have a pocket pair, so I want to get into a good situation with him. Instead though, I decided to put in the $50 in the moment. I'm not exactly sure why I did so, and the big blind puts in the call as well. That means we're going 3 ways to a flop with one player, obviously all in. When the flop comes 7, deuce, deuce, I check it over to the big blind, and he checks behind, bringing in the 8 of diamonds on the turn. No sense in betting here. I'm only going to get called by better hands, so I check it over to the big blind again. He checks behind, and we're off to a river. Copy and paste the action on this street as well. Check, check. In the early position, turns over his hand pretty confidently. Pocket 5s, that's going to take this pot. I can't beat it. The big blind ends up turning over jack 10 offsuit, so yeah. Pocket 5s is going to take that one down, but you can see how my raise pre-flop would have got jack 10 out of there, and I would have been flipping against early position, which I think is the much better route. Last hand of the night, and we upgrade from ace-queen all the way up to ace-king offsuit. I'm in late position. 900 in my stack, and the player on my right opens it up to $10. I 3-bet him to 35. The low jack puts in the cold call, the big blind, and the player on my right all call. We're going 4 ways to a flop, which comes queen high, queen 7-4 with 2 spades. When the action checks over to me, I look to take a free card and check. Player on my left checks as well. That brings in the 3 of clubs on the turn. Will the action get checked over to me for a second time? It will not. The big blind decides to bet out for $75. I could be floating if it was just me left in the hand, but when the player on my right puts in the call, I'm easily going to fold my cards. And that's the end of the hand and the end of the session. I'm coming back again tomorrow to play another cash game. It's a meetup game this time, but as for now, I rack up my chips and head over to the cage. End up getting out of this game for $7.53, so I ended up making $53 in this session. Don't forget the $495 I made earlier at Hollywood Columbus, so a net profit of $548 on the day. Thanks for watching to the end of my video. Click my head below to subscribe and stay in the loop. See you next time.